Hello, everyone, and as always, welcome back to Strategy Gaming Dojo, where we find, learn, and play one more turn of the great strategy games. Today, back into the big one, Gary Grigsby's War in the Pacific Admirals Edition. This is our play-by-email challenge against the devilish Mr. Lodrick. It is now February 5th, 1942. It is the setup phase. We've just watched the combat resolution from the third and the fourth. There wasn't a whole lot that happened. Of course, there's always a lot going on underneath the covers, but there wasn't, on the map itself, there wasn't a ton that happened. So there's not necessarily some place that we have to go look at. If we just kind of go, search about the map here, up in the Arabian Sea, you can see our ships coming down, Abadan to Karachi, Aden to Karachi. Up and down the coast, we do have a Japanese sub that we've spotted over here. Luckily, we have a lot of destroyers. There's a couple of destroyers there, three more destroyers there that we have in the area. We also have a sub squadron of our own. That's two subs. That's the Trusty and the Truant that are sitting here. We don't see anything else. Now, I can tell you, just having, we're a little further forward in the game, I can tell you it is incredibly important to have as much recon in this area here, Trivandrum or Cochin, but especially, and I do not have a base force at Mail yet. I should have one there, and I should have recon planes flying off of it. Same with Adu and even Diego Garcia, because if he comes, through the strait here, first place he may go to is Diego Garcia if he decides not to come up to the Bay of Bengal. But the one way that he can come get at you, right, is either through this gap or through this gap. So you need to have as much recon up here as possible. You'll see why in upcoming episodes. Anyway, yeah, the big teaser there. We've got ships coming in from Cape Town to Perth. You can see that. We don't really see any Japanese ships here, although we did detect a submarine last time, and we actually lost a ship right up in here in this area from a Japanese submarine. We no longer see it, but we know it's in the area. If we move around to the other side of Australia, uh, he continues. He landed at Ley. He's long ago landed at Rabaul. We have subs in the area, and I have more on the way. You can see here, that's a squadron of two subs. That's a squadron of three. That's a squadron of another two. And then we have just one sub up here, the Cachalot, which has hit a couple of things. They just haven't exploded. They didn't go boom. If we go up the Dutch East Indies, he's in at Ballypoppin here and Samarinda. He'll use this as a launching pad. We see here he's got some destroyers and a light cruiser down here. We've been able to identify that. He's taken Singapore, and he will soon be on Palembang or down into this area. But eventually, it's Batavia and Surabaya. Those are the places he'll go. We've just now lost Bataan, and you can see here the cross swords. He did just take this. Now, there are a bunch of little minor bases here, and you can see we're out of supply at all of those. We also have Cagayan here, where we have a little more of a force. We still have some supply here, but eventually he'll starve us out. You can see he's landing more things here, and we'll eventually take all of these bases, but it does take some time because there's just a lot of them, and he'll have to move here through the islands. Some of them he may just skip altogether, although a lot of Japanese players are completists. They want to take it all. Up here by Rangoon, there's not a whole lot. He's flying across some fighters from time to time with some sweeps. He's tried to bomb it a little bit. We've done a good job because we have these Hurricane 2 Trops that are coming on the way down. We do have the Flying Tigers here. Still have 13 of these for now. For now, they haven't done as good a job as they usually do. Fatigue 5. We've got 13 active, 6 in maintenance, 3 damaged. We actually only have 18 pilots left. May need to request a veteran or two just to bring it in here for when these get repaired, if they get repaired. As we look around here in China, we've got, these forces trying to get back. This stack is trying to get back here. As you can see, we've got, it's fairly decent sized force. I don't know what the assault value is. 353, I mean, we need all of that we can get. So we're going to get him right up here. This guy's trying to get out, but there's not a great place to go. He's got forces here. We can't see them now, but I guarantee you they're there. This stack here, these guys got trapped. I don't know. I may just take him down to Fu Chao. Why not? I don't think he has a whole lot back here. We can go sit in a base and eat up some more time, kind of some guerrilla warfare. Up here by I Chang, we're trying to pull out here and get back to our lines. We're doing the same here out of Loy Yang and Cheng Chao. So this is Cheng Chao. This is Loy Yang. We've pulled everything out. I'm having to meet here on the main road, and I'm going to just try to take them across the mountains and across the river. We're kind of, boxed in here on both sides when you look at that. Down in the South Pacific, and around Australia. In future episodes, we'll talk more about it. Obviously, Australia is going to become really the center of attention here shortly when he lands and starts trying to take Port Moresby, which is coming soon enough. I've got troops headed towards Nomaya. I've got more stuff going towards Suva. I can tell you, he seems to have started to really focus on this area more. I don't think this is his main task force, but there it is. Okay, so you see the carriers, a carrier escort, a cruiser, two more carriers, a cruiser, another carrier. He's got 6 carriers in this group, plus light carriers, carrier escorts, and the like. I mean, he's moving down here, but since we know that, we're actually, I say I am trying to dump as much in here as I can while I know where his carriers are. Because the last thing you want is, a regiment unloading here. We saw that at the disaster at Suva. We were trying to get the 134th up here to Suva, and that's right when his carriers showed up. Well, all of his carriers are up by Port Moresby now, so I'm just trying to dump everything I can in here. We've got a lot of stuff coming through Tahiti, Haiva Oa. These are kind of our bases that are in our secondary line where I like to take everything when we're being pressured. I have put some troops on Penryn. That's because you can, if you build the air base here a little bit, you can fly them over to Pago, then on to Suva. You don't have to take aircraft all the way into this theater. You can, dump them at Penryn. Also, Canton, he is seemingly not come out, I say seemingly, he hasn't come after Canton. Now, a lot of Japanese players will immediately run out here and grab Canton. It's easy to take, and it puts pressure on you, right? Because out of here, he can stage out of here and start messing with your shipping. If he's not going to come after it, I'm going to load this sucker up, and that means trying to get as much supply in there as we can so he can't starve us out. So, Canton, Baker, these are just islands we won't have to take in the future if we build them up now. And it's a lot easier to build them up now than it is to try to land, do an amphibious landing out here and take them later. So if he's going to leave those to us, we're going to take advantage of it if we can. A lot of shipping coming out here into the South Pacific, lots of transports. We could maybe get to some of these. I've got like 3 groups of transports here that are, we're skirting down the penalty box, and now they're going to meet up and all head towards Haiva Oa. I've got destroyers out in this area coming towards Pearl Harbor because he has had a lot of sub activity right out here. I've got a new sub here. Is it 1 or 2? Just one, the Grenadier. It's coming out here. I also have all of the battleships that I had on the U.S. West Coast. I put them with 3 destroyers and I'm having them come to Pearl. We're going to start deploying these out in certain places. Now, you've got to make sure you don't get near the carriers, but we know where the carriers are now, and I'm getting a lot more recon aircraft out into the Pacific. So we should have a pretty good idea in that, and if we can, put a couple of battleships, a couple of cruisers at, let's say, Pago Pago, assuming the carriers aren't around, that's really good protection for that very important island. I thought this time we would go up and around Alaska. a little bit. It's something we haven't talked a whole lot about. We'll look at what all's going out here, and then we'll also look at what I kind of call the Hawaiian corridor. So, Pearl Harbor, Midway, Johnston, Palmyra, and Christmas. These four are your front line in 1942, at least the first half of it. Up here in the central Pacific, to the south, we've talked about those islands many times, but I haven't done a whole lot of talking of what I like to put out here, what I like to do. Now, he has not come after Midway and really hasn't been active up here in the North Pacific at all. Sometimes Japanese players come immediately to try to take Adak or someplace up in the Alaskan Islands, but we haven't seen that at all. So we're going to go up there. I'll just kind of tell you how I like to set up Alaska, and then we'll look at those islands. But as I like to do this time, I decided going around the map kind of makes sense. I think right at the start of an episode, but then I always like to go to the stats. Now, this is what I used to do first, but that gives you a little context of where the game stands. I feel like. All right, over this last turn, we ran 4,500 sorties. He ran about 10,000, so he's running more than 2 to 1, or at least he did last turn. And really, for the campaign, he's inching up to being 100,000 more sorties. Just an intensive bombing campaign, and China accounts for a big lot of this. Air-to-air losses, we took 18, he took 2. Now, most of this was in the Dutch East Indies. Um, a lot of those planes, you're going to lose them eventually. And it's just a matter of it's kind of a matter of when you decide to lose them. I'm trying to go after him on naval attacks that probably don't have a 1% or 2% chance of success. But man, if we get a lucky hit on a battleship or something, he's got so much naval activity happening out there by the Dutch East Indies that I try to send the bombers out, even though those pilots are not good bombers. But it doesn't matter if you hold on to them for ground bombing, which I did do some of, and I've got some of those on ground bombing now, and you saw them get destroyed because if he's got any air power in and around the Dutch East Indies, and I'm talking about fighter air power, he's going to blow those bombers out of the sky. But that's always going to happen. You just don't have enough fighters there. So I've switched a lot of these over to naval attack, and we're just going to try to get a lucky hit because the ground bombing is not going to do much, and really it's just kind of throwing bombers into the Japanese grist mill. So, we're going to do more naval attack out by the Dutch East Indies. Destroyed on the field, 0-0. Destroyed by flak, we got one. 69 now to 12. Operational, 3-4. We're scooting this back up. Shows major victory, but as I've talked about many times before, we just can't let it get to 4-1. Right now, it's a little less than 2-1. Let's say 1.7 to 1, something like that. We do have 682 political points. Stanley, I promised Stanley I would talk a little bit about political points at some point. I don't know if I'll get to it this episode, but just kind of a cheat code, I guess, is I try to get as many American regiments bought out as I can. That's where I spend my political points because the more ground forces you have, the better. I mean, that's just kind of the way I look at it. I don't replace a whole lot of commanders. I don't find that particularly useful for the Allies in 1942. There aren't that many places to do it. Now, later on in the game, when you've got just an abundance of units and you don't really need to buy any more out, that's when you're going on the attack, I feel like that's when you replace commanders. But for now, there's not necessarily great places to do it. And even if there were, take like the Philippines, you're going to lose the Philippines no matter who's in command, right? So, like replacing a bunch of commanders there or with your ships, you could replace like a carrier task force, uh, you know, admiral, but really at this point in the game, I don't think it makes that much sense. I just try to buy out. And the one well, shoot, now we're talking about it, aren't we? The one I like to buy out if I can is this 40, I think it's the 40th division. Yeah, unit organization of the 40th division. And if you look here, you got the 108th infantry in that. You got I believe the 120, nope, 125th's not in it. I guess it's all the asterisks. 108th, 160th. That's why they have asterisks. And the 164th. And if we look at what it costs to buy those out, and we would want to put those in the 10th U.S. Army, this one's 714. So we don't have enough to do that. But I looked at this before the episode. I think the 108th we have enough. So West Coast. And yeah, sure enough, look down here, 10th U.S. Army. Now, why 10th U.S. Army? Well, that is the U.S. Army that operates in the Pacific. You could go, I don't think there's an Army group, yeah, I don't think there's an Army group in the South Pacific. In the Southwest Pacific, you have the first U.S. Army and the 6th, and the 8th, but they don't come on the map for quite some time. The one you're going to probably see first is 10th, and that's what I would put it in. And you may say, well, why not put it in first U.S. Amphib? That is a Marine command. And so I like to keep the Army in the Army chain of command. Call me crazy. But yeah, this is what I would buy it out into. 652 points. That gives you a good idea of what the infantry regiments cost at this point. You know, you saw the other one was like 714. This is 652. We have 682. And so, I just keep buying out this US 40th Division. After that, I would look for the next division I could find either at San Francisco or LA. I try to have them all at LA if I can, just so I can keep them straight in my mind. And I ship everything out of LA. I think we get a new division sometime in March or April. I just can't remember off the top of my head. All right, back to the stats. Whoops, whoa, the King George. We don't want to see that. Um, there we go. All right, back to the stats. So that was the air stats. Again, we lost quite a bit in air to air, but that was all in the Dutch East Indies. I just kind of don't. I mean, they count, but you're going to lose them eventually, usually anyway. Um, Here's the point situation. Oh, that's why I got off on that tangent. If you look at Allied bases controlled, 505 to 332. All right, so we still have about 170 more bases. But as you saw there in the Philippines, I mean, that is a lot of bases for him to pick up. And for everyone he picks up, we lose one. So it's like two every time. Allied aircraft points lost, we've lost 777. He's lost 431 on the point totals. Again, I would like this to be much better, but this is the real headliner, and this is where he's really hurt us. Is the Allied Army lost points, Japanese Army lost points, 6,000 to 116. Now it's always going to be lopsided, but that's too much. Allied ship sunk 362 for 2604 on points. The Japanese, this is what we know about. It's probably more, but we just don't know what it is. Ship sunk last turn. We lost one ship for 1 point, and that's what we need. More of that. This was out at Diego Garcia. This was one of the ships I was trying to get out of the Dutch East Indies, which we did, but it had been already been hurt and it just couldn't make it to Diego Garcia. It was abandoned by the crew and down it went. But it was a 1 point loss for a little minesweeper, so no biggie there. We'll take that every time, certainly. Group reinforcement schedule. Let's see what kind of aircraft we have coming in. Lysanders, Blenheims, okay. Light bombers, medium bombers, Walrus 2. Now this is on the battleship Resolution. Battleships, cruisers, and light cruisers generally have some kind of recon aircraft on them. As you can see, the American Nashville has a Seagull on it. The British Resolution has Walrus 2, has one. The Seagulls, there's four of the Seagulls on the Nashville. Okay. The Wapiti, whatever. The Wildebeest 4. Now, these are great because they're torpedo bombers. And that'll come into, you may say, where the hell is that? That's New Zealand. That's the northernmost base on New Zealand. I call it W Town. A little easier for me, guys. We get some Dragons coming into Darwin. Now, Dragons are transport aircraft. And then here's the ones I like. The Hurricane 1 Trops coming into Aden. We'll get them on a ship as fast as we can and get them off to Karachi and then fly them down the coast. You can see here F2A, F4F, SBD. These are all carrier aircraft. You can kind of tell because bigger call sign here, right? Um, well, I shouldn't say call sign. Somebody's going to yell at me in the comments. Yes, I know it's not their call sign. It is their designation of type of plane. SBD-1 Dauntlesses. These are all on a carrier. This is the Hornet that will be coming into San Diego in 24 days. I can't wait. So March 1st, I think, is the day we get the Hornet. And then we also get some training aircraft for carriers out here. You can see at Pearl. For whatever reason, the Buffaloes come in at Midway. Okay. Uh, and then at Pearl, we get some Vindicators. And so these are really training aircraft, more Vindicators at Midway. This is kind of interesting, right? I feel like this is the historical way for them to replace planes lost at Midway. But it doesn't look like we're going to have a Battle of Midway. And then in 24 days at Colombo, that's awesome. We get 16 more Hurricane 2B traps. These guys just tear up Japanese aircraft, or at least can hold their own. How about that? And they come with great pilots already, so this will be a good one as well. So in 24 days, on March 1st, I believe that is, we will get all of this aircraft. That's nice. Um, let's look and see if we have an ace, and we do not. And we actually have a lot of guys on our ledger here that have been killed in action, wounded in action for Foshi here, but the rest of the guys have been killed. Jones and Grover, still the only two guys we have with 4 kills. I've got to say, this is the latest I've ever been in a game without an ace. I usually trumpet these guys, be like, Grover, he's going to go around and sell war bonds and stuff. He's so well known in the States. And well, I had to look, make sure he's in the U.S. Army. I was like, oh gosh, is he British? Man, dress this guy up like Captain America. Have him sell war bonds. Um, okay, so that was top pilots. Ship sunk. We saw that. Ship availability. I just get excited when I see these lists. I'm like, oh yeah, we get that. All right, cool. Revenge, the battleship Revenge, we shall take it. Coming into Cape Town in one day. A bunch of cargo, some transports. You can see here the APs. Then in 10 days, we get the Ramillies and the Resolution. So 3 British battleships coming in. This is coming into Cape Town. Yeah, okay. 3 British battleships in there. The Nashville, the aforementioned Nashville, coming in at Balboa in 10. We've got the Decoy and the Griffin at Aden. So we've got 2 new British destroyers. All right. A bunch of these little APDs. These are kind of hybrid transport destroyers. Now they can't transport much. Make sure you protect these guys. You want to have them for your assaults on islands. They've got really good anti-sub, so they can lead out, and you're not going to get hit by subs. Fingers crossed. But they also can then transport a few troops. So you could even maybe put a command on here, or you could put, spread one whole battalion or regiment across these guys. And so anyway, protect these. They're only 5-point ships, but they're very helpful later on. You can see we get a lot of submarines coming up, so on and so forth. Ship withdrawal. Gotta remember, I haven't looked at this for a while. Let's look and see what has to withdraw. 19 days for the Dickman. Scheduled withdrawal here. Okay, well, we got to get it in a port so it can withdraw. And because it really costs you a lot of points, I think it's like 20 points for a 20-point ship per turn. So you got to get these guys off the map when they're supposed to be off the map. Just always keep that in mind. Due and overdue. All right. Let's look at ground reinforcement schedule. We know that I get excited when I see Chungking. Everybody Chungking tonight. 257. Now this is only a division, Chinese division. Chinese Corps, those generally come on at 257 at Chungking, and I love it, man. Just 250-point cores over and over and over. We need as many of those as we can get. You see 1st Australian Corps is getting quite a bit here. 21st Australian Brigade, 18th Australian Brigade, Aussie uh, Cavalry Regiment here. Oh, it's 7th Australian Division Cavalry Regiment. Okay, that's why that was throwing me off. We've got division and regiment all in one name. This will all be part of that 7th Australian Division. We're going to send all of that down to Australia. Now, the 1st Australian Division I put in India because, well, it's just easy. you know, you drop them off there and you're like, okay, I feel a little better about India. Now, you could certainly make the argument you should send the first one to Australia and maybe both of them because Australia is probably more um, in danger early on than India, certainly. I mean, if he takes Port Moresby, hey, he's there. The next step is into Australia. So you could certainly make the argument that that's where both of the first Australian divisions you get at Aden should go. But I put the first one in India. It always makes me feel a little comforted that I at least have India covered a little better. And then I'll send this second one off. You see these group wings, RAF. We've got the 221 and the 222. Now, 222 is at Colombo, 221 is at Rangoon. I don't know if we can get this back in there at Rangoon. Those come in directly at Karachi. What are they good for? War. What is it good for? It's got 75 aviation support, so that should really be able to support as much aviation as you need at Colombo and Rangoon. So get those moving as fast as you can. This 221, you may eventually put it under some other command or just leave it at Calcutta because it's very hard to get it over to Rangoon at this point of the game, or at least feel comfortable doing so, right? Keep bringing those Chinese cores. Let's go. All right, I think that kind of covers that pretty well. Let's go out to Alaska. All right. So as we've seen, I mean, we have not seen any activity up here in the Northern Pacific at all. And when you don't see any, what do you want to do? Well, you want to send as many transports early on up along the coast, and I'll just do this over and over. You can see there's one up here returning and then you've got one going out. Now, this one happens to be going to Cold Bay. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll take a bigger task force from the U.S. West Coast, usually out of Seattle or San Francisco. Where is this one out of? Oh, this is actually a transport. Okay, cool. This is out of Seattle. This is a coastal AA regiment. Cool. We're putting it right into Cold Bay, so it's got some AA. So this is actually not cargo. Do I have cargo coming? Maybe. Where are you going? That's transport picking up this at Net Island. And then we've got this one coming back. So this is one of my cargoes that's coming back. I take these smaller ones. They're 1 point ships. Lump them together. They don't need any escort. Send them right on the coast. So you may ask, how do you do that? Well, set task force routing. Go here, coastal. If I take this off, you can see how that changed. You see how that changed? Then hit coastal and it's going to hug the coast. Usually, most players, and I'll say I'm guilty of this as an allied player, are not going to put a sub patrol zone this close to the coast. They would be out here, right? So run these on coastal if you don't have any escort for them. So anyway, I'm running things back and forth. What do we have here? We have another cargo ship. This one is headed back to Seattle. It's got some bigger cargo capacity there. It's coming back. So I just run these back and forth. I have a destroyer that's just out here in front of Kodiak. Now I set up my pretty much my main hub out here in Alaska on Kodiak Island. So I've already got a lot of stuff here. We'll come look at that in a minute. I know some people are tempted to sit back here at Anchorage, but if he's coming this way, he being the Japanese player, he's either going to land at Kodiak or Seward. And I find a lot of Japanese players like to come after Kodiak because they think it's not going to be very well defended. And if they can get here, they can just bomb the smithereens out of you, right? So if they're all the way out here, they have a harder time doing it, and you can, really kind of fire with aircraft here. So anyway, I set it up at Kodiak, and there's another reason for that, but I'll get to that in a minute. Let's go out to Adak Island. I don't have a whole lot out here yet. I've got a base force. I will try to get more out here, but honestly, he hasn't pressured up here at all, and so I haven't been as in as big a hurry to get things to Alaska as I have been to get them into the South Pacific, and really that's going to be the case most of the time. But look, a good Japanese player is going to get up here eventually and pressure you a little bit, so you got to start getting stuff out here. But I do it with more like secondary type stuff, the kind of transports that aren't as good or don't have as good of endurance to get all the way out into the South Pacific, or these little cargo ships out of Seattle or something. I don't do it with my best stuff. That stuff I send into the South Pacific. But you do want to build this up. So we have brought a base force out to Adak. This did not start here. As a matter of fact, we got to put it on combat, get it ready to go. This was set for Nomaya. No, it's not going there. It's come to Adak. So we'll just set that and its objective. Okay, and then Dutch Harbor. Now, Dutch Harbor is kind of the first of let's just call it a major port, relatively speaking, in the Alaska theater. Dutch Harbor is going to be one you're going to want to build up. It's got a level 3 port. It does not have an airfield. Build that airfield as fast as you can. Now, some people may say, I don't know. Maybe I won't because Cold Bay does already have a level 2 natural airfield. It starts as a level 1, but you can build it naturally into a 2. You could take this all the way to a 5, although I don't think there's any real reason to do that. And it does cover Dutch Harbor. So, I mean, you certainly could make the decision of just doing your air operations out here out of Cold Bay. I like to have both just in case one is under pressure. So I start building Dutch Harbor right away. I do have an aircraft tender out here. There's absolutely no reason for it to be here when I don't have any aircraft here and couldn't even if I wanted to. So let's bundle that up and let's actually set that over at Cold Bay, which does have an airfield and has aircraft on it, as you can see by the icon. So we'll send it right over there. We do not want it to refuel. We want it to auto disband, as you always want your tenders to auto disband when they get where they get. These are a lot of patrol craft out here, just in and around Dutch Harbor. I could have them run kind of Dutch Harbor to Cold Bay, take one of these. What do we have? Two YPs. Let's take the AM and let's just do a patrol zone, kind of from in front of Cold Bay. And I've already got 2 set up. So let's see what this looks like now. Yeah, now it just kind of runs back and forth from Dutch Harbor to Cold Bay. You could even put 3 here so it kind of just goes around. Let's just do that. I like to see the patrol zones. Let's put 3, let's say here. Let's see if he goes out and about that way. Yeah, now we kind of cover almost every hex out here, right? So just this is just looking for mines. Sometimes a Japanese player will send a sub-mine layer over here and try to capture something, or try to surprise something, I guess is a better way to put it. On Dutch Harbor, I have a base force AA, so I have that one of those coastal AA regiments. I have the 297th Infantry, just the 1st Battalion, which has an assault number of 40, pretty damn good, for an island like this. And then I have coastal artillery, and that's really the setup you want to have if you can afford the units. I mean, if you have enough of these, now a lot of this AA needs to go into the South Pacific, but you will have extra ones, and you want to, put them on a major island base like this Dutch Harbor. Cold Bay, I've only got a base force there now. Like I said, I've got an airfield, and I have split one of the squadrons up. So I've got 7 fighters in here in this part B. So when you split up a squadron, it does part A, part B, and part C. I really try to do it where I would put part A down here, and then I've got B. That's just my own OCD talking. Then I've got B and C back. For whatever reason, I put part B down here, and then parts A and C are back at Kodiak, but we'll go look at that. We've got 7. I like to have 1 extra pilot If you're running 50 cap and you have one or two, if this gets above 20, add a second one. So this goes to 9. How would you do that? Request a veteran. Just sort by error. These are fighters. You can go up here. Now, I don't want the very best guys I have in Alaska, right? I want somebody that's, he's okay, like a 57, 56, but can get better with training. And that's kind of how I treat the pilots. So assign to the general reserve, transfer him over to this. Yep. Let's do that. When we go back, we can now look at the pilots. Um, and he'll be coming in 57, 56. Arnold. All right, cool. It's going to take him 5 days to get here. Fine, whatever. But that'll cut down on their fatigue a little bit, which is a little high at 17, running a 50% cap. 7 planes, 8 pilots. Let's give them a ninth pilot. But again, don't give the best stuff out. Even up here in Alaska, you could even go grab a 50-50, something like that. And when I say that, what do I mean? Let's look at this again. Actually, let's look back here. It'll tell you what you need. Air defensive strafing. Okay, well, let's go back to pilots. Why was I saying 57, 56? Well, this is really it. Experience and air. But obviously, defensiveness is part of being up here. You're not, I mean, he's not he's not going to go escort bombers out or something. He's just flying cap, so you want defensive fighters. So also look at that one. Okay, so I've got some fighters out here, flying around. Fighters use supply. Only ships use fuel. Uh, pla- Planes use supply for reasons that I've talked about many times, but that's just how the game is set up. Your fighters use supply. So there's really no reason for us to have fuel at Cold Bay here, but eventually I will send some out here just in case we have a ship that has to limp here. Now, I don't know why I couldn't go to Dutch Harbor, which has a level 3 port, and this only has a level 1. So it's just not, at the top of my list of what I'm up to. Kodiak, this is the big base for me up in Alaska. I have 2/3 of that squadron of fighters. And again, here I have 8, and that's the biggest this part of the squadron can be. It's part A. I actually have 11 pilots in here. Okay. We could go look at them and see if there's somebody we want to drop out, or we could even put one of these guys in the reserve so he can go to the South Pacific where things are a little hotter. And if you want to, you can take, release pilot, right? So let's say we think we have one too many, and we want to take the best guy because we want to put him down in one of the squadrons that may see action in the South Pacific. I'd go down here, most experience. So you just sort by experience, least, most. All right, 62. Most experience, you could release 5, you could release 10, and you want this to be on reserve. If you put it on group, he's just going to be in the reserve for this group. But if you put it on reserve, he goes to the general reserve, and any squadron can pick him up. If he's just on group here and he goes into the group reserve, then you can only turn him back active into this squadron, okay, or this part of a squadron. So put it on reserve, release pilot, the most experienced. There he goes. He's off. He's in our reserve pool now, and we can put him down into the South Pacific or wherever we need him, right? Maybe we need him back up here at some point. And well, we can't do this now because we just released one. We can't pick one back up until next turn. So anyway, I've got 2 of parts of the squadron down here. Here's another one with 11. Let's look at the pilots. This guy's actually quite good, but he's the squad leader. That's what that in red means, right? So it's showing to retain him, and it's not going to let us take that off. He's the squad leader, so we can't get him out of here. Even if we said release the most experienced, it would not release him, and that's what this retain is. And if there are other guys you definitely want to retain, you can just turn that to on, but you can't turn him to off because he's the squad leader. Okay, let's say these guys, we want to get rid of this guy. He's kind of crappy, right? So we would go to reserve. So he goes into the general reserve, and we'd go to least experienced, and we'd release that pilot. And when we come back, now we only have 10. And our average experience when they recalculate it for next turn will actually go up because we got rid of a guy that's, the lowest of the low. Anyway, these guys are in 50 cap, 15,000 feet, max range 5. Perfect. I've got stuff dropping off here. I don't even know what this is. Well, this already dropped off what it wanted to. We've got an AMC here, a local mine sweep. We've got a regular mine sweep out here, the turn, and then you can see, since this is kind of my main base out here, I've got a base force, I've got a construction regiment. So these guys are out here trying to build up the airfield and port. I mean, we could take both of these to a 6 if we wanted to. Um, we've got an AA, coastal AA regiment is out here. All right, great. Then I have two engineering units. Now, one of these I'm going to move. And actually, with this transport, maybe I'll put one of these on here and move it down to probably Cold Bay. I may put it in Dutch Harbor. I'm not sure, but there's no reason to have two on here. They're very useful. Like this one's an Assault 28, so this is a combat engineer battalion. It's an assault value of 28. It's got a 4 flak. It's got 27 engineers and 30 support. Really, this thing should be in the South Pacific. But we've got two of them up here. I may actually even put the other one in Seward. Because, like I said, if he's going to land somewhere, it's going to be probably one of these two places, or there's just kind of no reason to do it. And they fight. I mean, these guys have a 28 assault value, right? So you want to get them to the places where there may be combat. So I may float one of these over to Seward uh, eventually here. As you can see in Kodiak, we've got an assault strength of 175, looking pretty good. Um, Seward, what's up here? I just have this cargo that came in here. We already looked at that. I've got the 11th USAAF. So this is the Air Force High Command here. It's the air headquarters. Why do I have it in Seward and not in Anchorage and not in Kodiak? Well, because it's within 5 hexes of both of them. And if you look, its command radius is 5 hexes. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3. So when you put it in Seward, it's got command over this, and this. And it's 11th USAAF that is here. If we look at all of these planes, they're all 11th USAAF. If we look at all the planes in Kodiak, they are 11th USAF, except for these Catalinas. They're North Pacific. And, I like to have my Catalinas out here at Kodiak, and I like them to fly out over Cold Bay and Dutch Harbor and also into this little quadrant. It's very seldom a Japanese player is going to come all the way out here by Seattle and then go, whoop, okay, now we're going to go attack. They're usually going to come right up this corridor. So I get my Catalinas flying down here. Most valuable plane in the game, the Catalina. It's got a huge range and good recon. So we're flying right out here to see what the heck's going on. Anyway, so yeah, I've got my Catalinas here along with the two parts of that fighter group. Seward, it's got the Air Command, Base Force, Coastal Artillery, and a little bit of infantry. This has got a 39 assault value. Anchorage, if we look at Anchorage, these are all 11th USAAF. I think I have this one flying escort and some of the other ones training. Yeah, all the bombers are training, but they're training for different things. I've got one group of bolos for ASW. One I think is doing naval attack. One is doing ground attack. The Marauders, generally I'd always want these on naval attack. Marauders are actually, I don't know why I just thought of that. Marauders are usually really good at naval attack, I find anyway. But you could do both. I mean, it's all about the pilots, right? I mean, the planes don't do it. It's the pilots you're training up. Let's go look at the pilots. They've been built. Well, this is probably why I did it. They've already fairly, pretty decent at ground bombing already, whereas naval bombing, not so much. But let's get them doing naval bombing. And we've got too many pilots. 16 and 12. I don't like to have that many, even in training groups. So we could release these two guys are horrible, right? So let's put them on reserve and let's release one least experienced and two least experienced. And now at least, well, actually, I'm going to do a three. All right, those guys are essentially worthless. for now. I mean, it's going to take him forever to train up, so I'm just going to get rid of him. Now we've got one extra pilot. They're all out here. They're doing a lot of naval attack training. One other thing I wanted to mention up here is Nome. Now, it had been mentioned, pull this infantry out of Nome and go put it at Cold Bay or Dutch Harbor. Well, I do have a transport up here because I took the base force. I think I put it in Cold Bay. And now there's infantry, and it's got an assault strength of 13. Why am I not pulling this out immediately? Well, that is because if we hover over Nome, it's worth 35 points to him and 7 to us. That's 42 total points. I've seen Japanese players just run up here for no strategic purpose, just to grab points. And so I like to leave something at Nome. Just something to think about. Well, as usual, I've gone on too long. When we come back next time, I'm going to look at Midway, Johnston, Palmyra, Christmas, Canton, and Baker. This area here, because they're so important, and he's giving us free reign here. He's very aggressive in other places, but here we're just going to start trying to build the hell out of these places. It saves you a lot of time later in the game. Anyway, this has been Strategy Gaming Dojo. I'll talk to you next time. Have a great one. Adios.